Boy, I know what you people do in stores like this. That was the first thing Craig Ellison said to Darius Cole. Not, did you steal something? Not, can I see your receipt? Not, excuse me, sir. You people. Darius was 16 years old. He had a receipt in his hand. He had just paid $47.99 for basketball shorts at the Foot Locker 12 feet behind them. The timestamp on the receipt read 2:43 p.m. The security camera above the register had recorded the entire transaction. None of that mattered to Craig Ellison, because Craig Ellison had already decided, before the receipt, before the camera, before a single fact, what kind of person Darius Cole was. He was wrong about that. He had no idea how wrong. 10 feet away, a woman in a dark blazer watched all of this without moving, without speaking, without blinking. She let the guard finish his sentence. Then she set down her shopping bag, straightened her jacket, and walked over slowly. The entire food court went quiet. Craig Ellison had worked mall security for 11 years. 11 years of walking the same tile floors, watching the same escalators, standing at the same entrance points. He had started as a part-time weekend guard at the Millbrook Town Center in Columbus, Ohio, and worked his way up to senior security officer, a title that came with a slightly different uniform patch and the authority to detain shoppers he deemed suspicious. In those 11 years, Ellison had developed what he privately called instincts. He believed he could look at a person and know, within seconds, whether they were going to be a problem. He was particularly proud of this skill. He talked about it at shift briefings. He taught it to new hires. Darius was tall for his age, 6 feet even, broad shoulders, the kind of build that made adults in rooms look twice. He wore a clean white hoodie, dark jeans, and new Air Force Ones. His backpack was half open at the top. Ellison watched him from the security camera monitor in his station, then walked the floor to get a closer look. By the time Darius reached the register to pay for a pair of basketball shorts, Ellison had already made his decision. He followed the boy out of the store, waited until he reached the food court, and then moved in. He grabbed Darius by the upper arm, not tapped, not touched, grabbed, the kind of grip that makes a teenager's breath stop. What Craig Ellison did not do before approaching Darius was check the store's point-of-sale records. He did not review the security footage at the register. He did not speak to the Foot Locker cashier who had processed the transaction 4 minutes earlier and could confirm, in 10 seconds, that every item in that bag had been paid for. He did none of those things because Craig Ellison had already decided. What Craig Ellison didn't know was that the woman standing 10 feet away, watching him with absolute stillness, was Assistant United States Attorney Angela Cole, and that she had spent the last 4 years of her career prosecuting civil rights violations in the Southern District of Ohio. He didn't know that she had graduated summa cum laude from Spelman College before earning her law degree from the University of Michigan Law School, where she served on the law review and finished in the top 3 of her class. He didn't know that her current caseload included 3 active federal civil rights prosecutions against law enforcement officers and private security firms. Exactly the kind of cases that began with incidents exactly like this one. But before we go further, you need to know who Darius Cole actually was on that Tuesday afternoon. He was 16, a junior at Westover High School, carrying a 3.4 GPA and a spot on the varsity basketball team. He was not a kid who caused trouble. He was the kind of kid teachers remember. Polite, focused, a little quiet, the kind of kid who said yes, sir, and no, ma'am, without being told to. His mother had given him the talk. Not the birds and bees talk, the other one. The one black mothers give their sons before they're old enough to drive. Keep your hands visible. Don't reach into your pockets without saying what you're doing. Stay calm. Don't raise your voice. Keep your receipt. Always keep your receipt. Darius had followed every one of those rules. He had paid at the register. He had his receipt in his hand. He had done everything right, and he was still standing in a food court with a security guard's hand wrapped around his arm. That is the world this story lives in. He didn't know that she had personally argued before the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals at 34 years old, winning a landmark decision on unreasonable detention that was now cited in law school classrooms across the country. And he certainly didn't know that 2 of the 5 people who had stopped eating their lunch to watch him grab a teenage boy by the arm were recording everything on their phones. All Craig Ellison saw was a tall black teenager with a backpack, and that was enough for him. Angela Cole had not planned to be at Millbrook Town Center that afternoon. Her day had started at 5:45 a.m. with a 6-mile run, followed by 2 hours of trial preparation for a Section 1, 983 civil rights case she was set to argue in federal court the following Tuesday. She had skipped breakfast, answered 41 emails before 9 a.m., and spent the better part of the morning in a conference call with investigators from the FBI's Civil Rights Unit in Washington. By 1 p.m., her assistant had left a sticky note on her desk. Darius's birthday dinner tonight. Don't forget. Angela had stared at the note for a long moment. Her son was turning 16 in 4 days. She had promised him new basketball shorts for the school tournament next week. She had been promising since January. She left the office at 3:15 p.m., the earliest she had left in 3 weeks, and drove to Millbrook Town Center. She told Darius to meet her there after his tutoring session. They would buy the shorts, eat dinner at the Thai place on the 2nd floor, and she would be back at her desk by 7 p.m. to finish the brief she owed her supervising attorney by morning. What Angela Cole did not know, could not have planned, was that the case she was preparing for federal court involved a private security firm accused of racially profiling black teenagers in a retail setting in Cincinnati. She had spent 4 years building a legal framework to prove that what those officers did was not a mistake, that it was policy, that it was pattern, that it was race. She did not know that in 47 minutes she would watch that exact same pattern play out live 10 feet in front of her, not as a case file, not as a deposition transcript, as her son. There is a word lawyers use for this kind of moment. They call it res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. What happened next would speak very loudly. It was supposed to be a simple afternoon. A mother and her son. An hour at the mall. A birthday promise finally kept. She had been in the shoe store 2 aisles over when she heard the commotion. She turned the corner and saw Craig Ellison's hand wrapped around her son's arm. She saw Darius standing with his hands open at his sides, the way she had taught him since he was 9 years old. Hands visible, voice calm. Don't give them a reason. She had taught him that not because she wanted to, but because she knew from 16 years of civil rights law exactly what could happen when a black boy didn't. Angela set down her shopping bag. She opened her purse and she waited. Ellison looked up when he heard footsteps approaching, a woman in a blazer, professional, composed. He assumed she was a bystander who was about to ask him to let the boy go. He prepared his standard response. "Ma'am, this is a security matter. Please step back." Angela didn't slow down. She walked directly to Darius, placed one hand gently on his shoulder, and looked at Ellison with an expression that contained absolutely no panic. "Release my son's arm," she said. Not loudly, not angrily, simply. Ellison didn't release the arm. "Ma'am, your son is suspected of shoplifting from Foot Locker. I need to escort him to the security office for questioning." "On what basis?" Angela asked. "What did you observe?" "I observed him acting suspiciously inside the store," Ellison said, "handling merchandise and leaving without being properly checked." "He was checked," Angela said. "He paid at the register. Darius," she looked at her son, "show him the receipt." Darius reached into his bag with his free hand and pulled out a folded paper receipt. He held it out to Ellison. Ellison glanced at it and then looked away. "Receipts can be old, or from a different store. I need to verify the items." Angela looked at Ellison steadily. "You're refusing to look at the receipt." "I'm doing my job, ma'am." "Your job requires a reasonable basis for detention," Angela said. "Handling merchandise in a store and leaving with a receipt is not shoplifting. It is shopping. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time to release his arm." Ellison still didn't let go. A small crowd was beginning to form. 2 women at a nearby table had stopped eating. A teenager leaned against the railing above, phone tilted downward. A man in a Millbrook Town Center polo shirt, a different employee, younger than Ellison, had stopped near the smoothie kiosk and was watching with visible discomfort. "My name is Angela Cole," she said. "I am an assistant United States attorney for the Southern District of Ohio. I am asking you to release my son based on the receipt he has shown you, which documents a completed legal purchase made 4 minutes ago in this building. Release him now." Ellison stared at the badge. His grip loosened slightly. Not entirely, but slightly. Something moved behind his eyes. Not regret, not caution. Something harder. "Anyone can get one of those," Ellison said. Angela blinked once. "Excuse me?" "I said anyone can print a government ID. My brother-in-law makes custom badges online." Ellison lifted his chin. "I'm not releasing this kid until my supervisor reviews the footage." Angela looked at him for a long moment. She put the badge back in her purse. She pulled out her phone. "Then I'm calling the Columbus Police Department," she said. "Not because I need them to resolve this, but because I want everything that happens from this moment forward documented with a case number." "You can call whoever you want," Ellison said, but his voice had shifted. Not much, just enough. The mall security supervisor arrived 2 minutes later. His name tag read, Marcus Briggs, head of security. He was in his late 40s, carrying a radio, and he took one look at the scene. The crowd, the phones, the woman with the federal ID, and felt something drop in his stomach. "What's the situation here, Craig?" Ellison straightened. "I detained a suspected shoplifter from Foot Locker. The woman is claiming to be a federal attorney and is interfering with the investigation." Briggs looked at Angela. She held out her DOJ badge again, steady and calm. Briggs examined it and said nothing for a moment. "Mr. Briggs," Angela said, "your officer has detained my 16-year-old son for approximately 9 minutes without verifiable cause. My son has a time-stamped receipt for every item in his bag. I have asked 3 times for his release. I have been refused each time." Briggs turned to Ellison. "Did you check the register records?" Ellison hesitated. "Not yet. I was in the process of—" "Did you review the in-store footage at the point of sale?" "I was going to do that in the security office." Briggs looked at the receipt Darius was still holding out. He took it. He looked at the timestamp. He looked at the itemized list. He looked at the store name printed at the top. His jaw tightened. "Craig," he said quietly, "this receipt is from Foot Locker, time-stamped 3:49 p.m. It's 4:02 p.m. right now. What exactly is the basis for the detention?" Ellison looked at the crowd, at the phones, at the supervisor's expression, and then, instead of backing down, he said the sentence that would end his career. "You know how these kids are, Marcus. A kid like him walks into a Foot Locker with a big backpack, leaves in 10 minutes. You tell me what that looks like." The food court went completely silent. Not the kind of silence that happens when a place gets quiet. The kind that happens when every person in a room understands that something has just gone very, very wrong. At the table nearest to them, a woman in her 50s had stopped lifting her fork halfway to her mouth. She didn't put it down. She just stopped. A man 2 tables over had his phone raised. He wasn't sure when he had picked it up. At the subway counter, the employee who had been wiping down the sneeze guard had gone still, cloth in hand, watching. Darius Cole did not move. He had spent 16 years being taught not to move in moments like this. His hands were still open at his sides. His face was still calm, but his eyes found his mother's face, and in that single look past something that no script can capture, the specific exhaustion of a black boy who did everything right and still ended up here. Angela looked at Ellison. Ellison looked at Angela. And for the first time since she had walked over, Craig Ellison appeared to understand that he might have made a significant mistake. Darius closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. Angela looked at Ellison with the calm, focused precision of someone who had just heard a sentence she would be quoting in a legal brief for the next 18 months. "You know how these kids are," she repeated, her voice low and clear. "Let the record reflect that, Craig Ellison. Senior security officer at Millbrook Town Center just stated on camera in front of multiple witnesses that the basis for detaining my son was not evidence, it was race. At least 3 phones were recording. The food court security camera above gate 12 was also rolling. Every word was captured. Before we continue, drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from? And if you believe that a receipt should be enough, that no parent should ever have to prove their child's innocence for buying a pair of shorts, hit that like button and subscribe. We're documenting every single case where racial profiling met the wrong family. Your support keeps these stories alive. Angela Cole turned to Marcus Briggs. When she spoke again, her voice was the voice she used in federal court. Precise, measured, impossible to interrupt. Mr. Briggs, I need you to hear me very carefully. My name is Angela Cole. I am an assistant United States attorney currently assigned to the Civil Rights Division of the Southern District of Ohio. My current active caseload includes 3 open prosecutions against private security firms for unlawful detention under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. She paused for exactly 1 second. What your officer just did, detaining a minor without evidence, refusing a valid receipt, dismissing a federal credential, and then stating on camera that the reason for the detention was racial, is not a policy violation. It is a federal civil rights offense, and I am standing in a shopping mall with a government-issued badge, a time-stamped receipt, and at least 3 witness recordings on a Tuesday afternoon because I was trying to buy my son birthday shorts. Briggs had gone completely still. Ellison's face had changed color. Not in shame, in the specific, grinding panic of a man who has just understood that the story he was telling himself about instincts, about experience, about knowing, had just collided with the reality of who was standing in front of him. This is, he started. You're done speaking, Angela said, simply, finally. Mr. Briggs, release my son. Briggs looked at Ellison. Ellison released Darius's arm. Darius took 1 step toward his mother. Angela put her hand on the back of his neck the way she had since he was small and looked at him once, just once, with an expression that said, I have you. I have always had you. You did everything right. Then Ellison did something that surprised everyone, including his supervisor. I want you to know, he said, his voice rising slightly, that I was doing my job. And if she really is who she says she is, she shouldn't be here making a scene. She should understand that I have a responsibility to this mall and to our tenants. Angela turned back to him slowly. You want me to understand, she said, that after detaining my minor son without evidence, dismissing a federal credential, stating on camera that the basis for the detention was racial, and refusing 3 direct requests for release, you want me to have sympathy for your position. She let that sentence sit. I'm going to give you the same 2 options I give defendants in my courtroom. Option 1, you and your employer cooperate fully with the civil rights complaint I am filing tonight. You provide all footage, all records, all documentation within 72 hours. Option 2, I file immediately. I name you personally as a defendant, and I let a federal jury decide what your instincts are worth. Ellison's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Marcus Briggs put his hand on Ellison's arm, the same grip Ellison had used on Darius 11 minutes earlier. Craig, we're done here. Angela looked at the crowd, then at the cameras, then at her son. Are you okay? She asked him. Darius nodded. His eyes were dry. He had held it together through every second. Yeah, he said quietly. I did what you taught me. You did, she said. Let's go. She picked up her shopping bag. She took Darius by the shoulder, and they walked out of the food court together, past the silent crowd, past the phones still recording, past Craig Ellison, who stood absolutely still and watched them leave. The 3 phone videos reached social media within 40 minutes of Angela and Darius walking out of Millbrook Town Center. By 6 p.m. that evening, the clip of Craig Ellison saying, "You know how these kids are," had been shared over 4,000 times across 2 platforms. By 9 p.m., it was being discussed on 2 national news sites. By the following morning, it was everywhere. The food court security footage, which captured the entire 11-minute encounter from 3 angles, was requested by a local Columbus news station at 7:45 a.m. the next day. The mall's legal team, after consulting with corporate headquarters, released a statement by noon. Millbrook Town Center takes all allegations of discriminatory conduct by our staff with the utmost seriousness. The incident is under internal review, and the employee in question has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Craig Ellison did not return to work the following morning. He was not asked to. Civil rights attorneys, legal commentators, and child advocacy organizations all noted the same detail in their coverage. The victim was 16 years old. He had a receipt. He had done everything right, and it still took his mother, a federal prosecutor, 11 minutes and a government badge to get a security guard to release him. That was the part that landed hardest, not the identity of the mother, but the question underneath it. What happens to the 16-year-olds whose mothers aren't assistant U.S. attorneys? This is why we share these stories, because accountability only happens when people are watching. If you believe that no child should have to prove their innocence for buying something legally, subscribe. We are building a community that refuses to let these moments disappear. Every subscription tells the algorithm that stories like Darius's matter. Craig Ellison was terminated by Millbrook Town Center 9 days after the incident. The termination letter, later obtained through the civil proceeding, cited 4 violations: failure to verify purchase records before initiating a detention, refusal to accept a valid receipt as evidence, dismissal of a federal government credential, and conduct unbecoming of a security professional, including a statement that demonstrated racial bias on recorded footage. His Ohio security officer license, the certification required to work in private security in the state, was suspended pending review by the Ohio Department of Public Safety. The review, completed 6 weeks later, concluded that Ellison's conduct on March 14th represented a violation of the professional conduct standards required for licensure. The license was revoked. Craig Ellison could no longer legally work as a security officer in the state of Ohio. He applied for 14 security positions across Columbus and Cincinnati over the following 4 months. Every background check returned the same result: the viral video, the termination, the license revocation. Not one employer called him back. The security firm that had contracted his services to Millbrook Town Center, Atlas Private Security Group, was named as a co-defendant in the civil lawsuit. Their legal team quietly informed the firm's other mall clients of the pending litigation. 3 contracts were not renewed at the end of their terms. The firm laid off 11 employees in the quarter following the lawsuit filing. At 44 years old, Craig Ellison was working a warehouse night shift at a fulfillment center for $11 an hour. The 11 years he had spent building what he called a career in security, the uniform, the title, the instincts he was so proud of, were gone. Every job application that required a background check surfaced the same result: a food court in Columbus, Ohio, a 16-year-old boy with a receipt, and a sentence that ended everything. You know how these kids are. Those 6 words cost him 11 years of work, his professional license, and his livelihood. In 11 minutes. Here is what that destruction looked like. Step by step. Day 9. Terminated from Millbrook Town Center. The termination letter cited 4 violations. His name was flagged in the company's internal security database. Week 6. His Ohio security officer license was revoked by the Department of Public Safety following a formal review. Without that license, he could not legally work as a security officer anywhere in the state. Month 4. He had applied for 14 security positions across Columbus and Cincinnati. Every single background check surfaced the same 3 things: the viral video, the termination record, and the license revocation. Not one employer called him back. Month 8. Atlas Private Security Group, the firm that had contracted his services, was named as a co-defendant in Angela's federal civil lawsuit. The firm lost 3 mall contracts within 60 days of the filing. 11 employees lost their jobs as a result of the lawsuit's fallout. Craig Ellison was 44 years old. He had spent 11 years building what he thought was a career. He lost it in the same 11 minutes it took him to grab a boy by the arm in a food court in Columbus, Ohio. 6 words, 11 minutes, 11 years. Angela Cole, filed her civil rights complaint 6 days after the incident. The complaint named Craig Ellison personally, Atlas Private Security Group, and Millbrook Town Center's parent company. It alleged unlawful detention of a minor, racial discrimination in the provision of a public accommodation, and violation of 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. The complaint was 61 pages. Angela had written most of it herself at her kitchen table after Darius had gone to bed. It included the time-stamped footage from all 3 phone recordings, the food court security camera transcript, and a documented analysis of Atlas Private Security Group's detention records over the prior 3 years, records that showed a significant disparity in the demographic profile of individuals detained by their officers. Millbrook Town Center's parent company settled 14 months after the complaint was filed. The settlement amount was $4.2 million. As part of the consent agreement, Atlas Private Security Group was required to implement mandatory bias training for all officers, institute a verification protocol requiring register confirmation before any detention, and submit quarterly detention reports to an independent civil rights auditor for 3 years. Angela donated a significant portion of her settlement to the Columbus Legal Aid Society, which provides free legal representation to minors in civil rights cases. She established a fund specifically for cases involving unlawful detention of black youth in retail settings, the kind of cases that rarely make national news because the child's mother isn't a federal attorney. Darius Cole won his school basketball tournament 3 weeks after the incident. He wore the shorts he bought that afternoon at Foot Locker. His mother sat in the 3rd row. She had moved her Tuesday court preparation to Monday evening so she could be there. He still has the receipt. He keeps it in a frame on his desk, not as a trophy, as a reminder that he did everything right, and that sometimes doing everything right isn't enough, but that his mother had also done everything right, and that together they had made it mean something. Section 9, Closing Moral plus Comment, C. TA 2530 to end. The lesson here is not just about one security guard and one shopping mall. It is about a 16-year-old boy who walked into a store, paid for what he wanted, kept his receipt, kept his hands visible, kept his voice calm, and was still grabbed by an adult who had already decided before the transaction, before the conversation, before a single fact, what kind of person he was. It is about the mothers who teach their sons these survival rules, not because they want to, but because they know what happens when those rules aren't followed. It is about what it costs a family to fight back, and it is about what it costs the people who make that fight necessary. A receipt should be enough. A 16-year-old should not need his mother to hold a federal badge to walk out of a mall. And a woman should not have to be an assistant United States attorney to protect her child from being grabbed in a food court on a Tuesday afternoon. But she was, and she did, and the receipt is now in a frame. If you have ever been watched, followed, stopped, questioned, or grabbed for something you didn't do in a place you had every right to be, this story is for you and for your children. Here is the question I want to leave you with today, and I read every single comment. What do you think it will actually take? Not a viral video, not a lawsuit, not a federal attorney. What will it actually take for a black teenager with a receipt to just walk out of a store? Drop your answer below. I want to know what you think.